Hey everybody, welcome back. Welcome to the new NVIDIA app. I'm going to tell you the one reason why you want to get this for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, the new NVIDIA app, as you may or may not know, is eventually going to replace NVIDIA Control Panel and GeForce Experience. This is in beta right now. There are some advantages to it in its current state over those two programs. I was skeptical of it for a while, particularly because I use GeForce Experience all the time to record videos, and I really need it to work. So I didn't want to get into a beta program that didn't function well, or that I had to kind of relearn. And neither of those two things have been the case. I've actually been really impressed with it. It's very simple to navigate. It successfully imported all of my settings over from both NVIDIA Control Panel and GeForce Experience, which is fantastic. There's some exciting things that I think are in the pipeline for this, one of which is a built-in DLSS version swapper. We all know that we use the DLSS swapper program, fantastic program, that we constantly have to use that every time the sim is updated to make sure that we have the latest version of the DLSS file. Um, there is quote unquote additional DLSS controls coming into this program in the beta stage at some point, so I'm assuming that that's probably what that's going to be. First great thing about this is you don't have to log in to download a driver, which is great. You can log in if you want to, but you don't have to. Now, I'll go through the basics of the download and install process. So I've got the latest version of the Game Ready driver, which is 55176, came out about 4 hours ago. Now, when you download this program and install it, it is automatically going to remove GeForce Experience. So you don't have to manually remove GeForce Experience. So when you install this program, you're going to want to select Game Ready drivers as your preferred driver type. If you for some reason forget to do that when you get here into the main program, you just click here on drivers, come over here and make sure Game Ready driver is selected. That's what you want. And it's also going to ask you when the install is taking place, which I couldn't record because I didn't have GeForce Experience because it removed it. It's going to ask you during the install process if you want to optimize your games. Now, the answer to that question is no, but the optimizer has gotten way, way better, and I'll show you that very shortly. And then the last thing it's going to ask you if you want to do an express install or a custom install, and you want to do a custom install, and you want to make sure you deselect the HD audio driver. You do not want to install that. If you've got the HD audio driver installed already and it's working for you, that's great. For a lot of people, it causes problems, and if you don't have it installed, don't install it because you may then create some problems. So, in terms of install and setup, it imports all of your, like I said, your NVIDIA Control Panel and your GeForce Experience settings. The ones that are not every setting from both of those programs are in this yet, but the ones that are in the program were imported correctly. In my case, in this particular case, you can see when you go to Graphics Global Settings, DSR factors. This is fantastic. Now you can just select your DSR, your DLDSR scaling right here. 1.78, 2.25 is what I want. The smoothness scale is down here at the bottom. And it's got some of the other settings that I had in NVIDIA Control Panel. One of them being shader cache size being unlimited. So that's fantastic. Now, another great thing, when you go into your programs, now instead of having to go to a drop down and search through 900 programs to find Microsoft Flight Simulator, it's just going to have the programs here on the side that actually use the driver. So in my case, it's 2 of them, and it makes it much, much easier to navigate. Now, you can see here it says game is not optimized because the optimizer in GeForce Experience was terrible. The optimizer in this program is much, much better. you can see here the current values. That's what I had set prior to installing this program when I was still running GeForce Experience, and I had all my settings in there and in the sim itself. As a matter of fact, these are all my sim settings. So these are my current values, and these are the recommended values. Now, if we go through here, anisotropic filtering is one difference. I have it off in the sim because I have it on in NVIDIA control panel, but that's a purposeful decision on my part. But if you look at the rest of the values that they recommend and compare to what I have, which is very good, you'll notice that the recommendations are pretty much spot on to what I've come up with myself. So, ultra, high, 192, high, DirectX 12, full screen. All this stuff is pretty much the same. That we'll get to one point where it's different. Ultra, high, 155 versus 150 for OLED. Again, all this stuff is the same. Now, interestingly enough, so I've got DLDSR factors enabled, and the NVIDIA app is suggesting that I upscale to 3840 times 2160, which is 4K. Well, more than 4K, as a matter of fact. So it's actually suggesting that I use the DLDSR upscaling, which is pretty interesting. Because it suggests I use the upscaling, I think that is why it tells me I should be using DLSS performance, because we're upscaling so much, or the recommendation is to upscale so much, that it would then recommend me using performance mode. But that's actually very interesting to me that it would recommend the upscale, which tells me that it knows by some manner of evaluating my hardware that I have the ability to upscale and still get decent performance, which I know. Again, most of this stuff is the same. The train level detail, I have it higher than it is recommending. But all of the rest of this stuff, if you look at it, all of this stuff is the same as to what I'm actually running. So I would say, 95% of the settings are all the same in terms of what it is recommending and what I'm actually using. This stuff we'll get into here a little bit in a moment. Low latency mode is off, of course. Max frame rate, that is my monitor refresh rate. Now, if we go then, so that's a really big improvement, I can tell you already. Now, if you go into settings, I've got the NVIDIA overlay set up. But if you go into settings and you come down here to the bottom, you can open NVIDIA Control Panel from the app itself. One thing to make sure that you do, open NVIDIA Control Panel, come down here to Video, adjust video color settings. Here under number 2, check this box here, so to speak, with the NVIDIA settings. Come over to Advanced and make sure your dynamic range is on full. This is one of those things that constantly gets reset back to limited. And the difference is, in the full dynamic range, you get more detail in the darker and brighter areas of the screen. So you definitely want your full dynamic range, and a lot of times that gets reset to being limited. So go ahead and check that. So as you can see, it's really easy to navigate. Very, very easy to navigate. Now let's take a real quick look at the party piece. So RTX Dynamic Range. So first of all, this program now comes with 2 AI-driven features. One is RTX HDR, and one is RTX Dynamic Vibrance. Now, RTX HDR can basically sort of simulate HDR in games that do not have native HDR, which Microsoft Flight Simulator does. So we don't need it per se in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Some people in other games have said that RTX HDR is better than the version of HDR that when you enable HDR, native HDR in the game, whatever game you're talking about. I can understand how that might be, because this RTX HDR is AI, right? So I am to the point now where I fully believe that this HDR technology, this HDR programming, HDR, this AI technology is just growing by leaps and bounds in terms of what it can deliver over like a static implementation of a certain program or a certain feature in a game. So it doesn't really surprise me that some people are saying that RTX HDR is better than native HDR in certain games. I don't know if that's the case in Microsoft Flight Simulator because I don't have an HDR monitor. So you may want to check to see whether the RTX HDR is better than the native Microsoft Flight Simulator implementation. But the one thing that most definitely will impact us and brings a lot to the table in Microsoft Flight Simulator is this RTX Dynamic Vibrance. Now, what Dynamic Vibrance is, it makes the colors pop, is the way I put it. It makes them brighter, makes them richer, it makes them crisper. It just gives it gives the scene a dynamic clarity and a depth of color that is just awesome. And what it is, this again is HI, and so if you're familiar with the settings, the filters in Microsoft Flights in NVIDIA, now you've got all these different options that you can select, right? And some of these may be new compared to what was available in GeForce Experience before this NVIDIA app came out. But a lot of these will look familiar to you guys: brightness and contrast, black and white, color, depth of field. I don't know if depth of field, but a lot of these are familiar to you. The one that's not is here, this dynamic RTX Dynamic Vibrance. And basically, to me, what the Dynamic Vibrance does is it simplifies the whole process. You don't have to sit there and mess with all these different things to try to get, the perfect visual. You can just apply this, and then AI is going to give you an enhanced image. Now, what does that enhanced image look like? So this is NVIDIA's example right here. So this is native. This is a native image from whatever game, native scene from whatever game. And if you see this as we pull this over here, this is RTX Dynamic Vibrance, and you can see it's more colorful, it's brighter, it's more vibrant, um, and to me it just looks better. It just looks much better. So let's go into Microsoft Flight Simulator and take a look at what we're talking about. So this is so I don't mess with any of those filters because I just don't have the time. You get to the point where I feel like you get to the point where you're just kind of experimenting, and I just found that I would lose direction. Like I'd be trying to get one color correct or trying to get one setting correct, and I'd wind up screwing something else up, and it just got to be like I felt like I was chasing my tail. And so I just left it set at just what Microsoft Flight Simulator looks like. And that's what this is right now. Okay? So now look at this. Not a huge difference. It's a subtle difference, but this is with RTX Dynamic Vibrance. And to me, the colors look more alive. Um, the contrast looks better. And I'll turn it off again. See how that just looks a little bit dull, especially here, like these greens over here. These greens here just look a little bit dull. And even the runway color looks dull. And the buildings it just looks a little bit dull. And then you turn this on and you can see this. It just brightens everything up. And so, in my opinion, just to be able to just make one change and have this impact that it has is fantastic, rather than sitting there having to mess with all these different things. Now you can mess with all these different things if you'd like to. Like I said, I mean, you can add brightness and contrast, and you can add color, and then you can start it's too contrasty. All right, I'm going to turn that down. Oh, the shadows aren't high enough. Okay, it's overexposed. I'm going to turn that down. Now the colors look dull, so I'm going to come here and I want, a warmer temperature. And then to me, it just gets to the point where you're chasing your own tail. And so I'd much rather just get rid of this stuff, uh, add this RTX Dynamic Vibrance, turn it on, and I'm done. Now, the stock values that it gives you in intensity is 50%, and in saturation is 25%. You know what? It works for me. You can play with it if you want to. Um, I kind of, in some ways, would like it to be a little bit deeper blue in the sky. And in particular, the saturation boost, I think, is very, very subtle. You can see, I think that looks very good, actually. But again, it's your preference, whatever you prefer, right? And whatever looks good on my screen might not necessarily look good on your screen, and vice versa. So there's no point in me giving you whatever values I've chosen. Um, you know, I would turn on the dynamic vibrance and have a look at it and see what you think. Um, so again, let me turn that off real quick, and then that's off. And here we go back on. Just gives it a little bit of pizzazz. So I really like the app. I really like this filter. I think this filter is worth the app alone. And I'm definitely going to be keeping it and using this filter in my everyday flying. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope this was useful to you. I know there are other people that are going to do videos much more in depth about all the different choices of filters and whatnot. I like to keep things simple and get as much out of something as I can without having to waste a ton of time doing it. And I think this dynamic vibrance falls very, very nicely into that category. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. And I thank you for watching. I hope you guys are having a great day.